All right, good morning, everyone. Let's get this thing kicked off. Welcome back to the CI Chit Chat. Mitchell Hora with you here at Continuum Ag. Nice cold day here in Southeast Iowa. Definitely could use a little snow to protect the cover crop, but it's okay. Hopefully, the rye will continue to be all right, and it'll be there in the spring. So, let's jump in. CI Chit Chat. Talk about carbon intensity, talking about 45Z. A lot of recent updates there, and I would encourage you all to go to our YouTube page or the Topsoil podcast, and you can check out some of the recent recordings that I've done talking about more of the details of the recent updates. I was just putting together a new blog that's going to be coming out. Maybe I'll give a couple of quick highlights from that about just my quick kind of high level takeaways about the recent 45Z updated details, I guess you could call it. Wasn't necessarily all rules, but updated information coming out of Washington, D.C. I do have a variety of questions I want to get to. Happy to answer your questions in the chat or even pulling some of you in and asking the question live here on the show. Okay, my 10 quick takeaways. You'll be able to read more about my details in this, but number one, 45Z is not dead. It could have been basically just thrown to the wayside. It could have not gotten as far along from the Biden administration as it did. Could have gotten, just kind of axed. And that did not happen. 45Z is very much still alive, but we got to have the Trump team come in and get it fixed. The IRS did not do enough, though, at least on the farmer side. The IRS really did not publish a preliminary rule. They did not start the ball rolling. Like they did not get enough details in their language to start 45Z. They did not draft, or they did not publish a preliminary rule like we were hoping for. They published a intent to propose a rule, and they published the draft of that rule and opened up the public comment period. So really wasn't quite enough teeth in it like we were wanting. And again, Trump administration is going to have to come in and get that taken care of. The new Secretary Treasury nominee, Scott Bassent, I saw is in the Finance Committee hearing today and should pass through and be able to go to get his final approval or whatever I think are some of the next steps. But Secretary Treasury Scott Bassett making progress through the steps there in DC. Looking forward to getting him approved and getting him working on this. He did already mention in some of the initial hearings, he mentioned 45Z and that he's wanting to work on getting that out. So that's encouraging. But today the IRS really didn't do quite enough. So there's not this floodgates opening. That we got to have the Trump team actually get some more details, and hopefully that can happen soon. The IRS did say that they're going to use the new 45Z CF GREET model, though, as part of the calculation. And that's how you're going to calculate carbon intensity. So that was one of the missing things before was what model are we going to use? They did say we're going to use the 45Z CF GREET model, a new model from the Department of Energy, which is great. They also said you can use the CORSIA model. It's not great for farmers and for corn based biofuels, but having the option CORSIA or the GREET model is great. We did get that 45Z CF GREET model published by the Department of Energy last week, but it is missing the feedstock calculator. So usually that GREET model, it's a packet of different Excel files, and they use macros to kind of tie it all together. It's super old school, but they did publish the 45ZF GREET model. It's got like a front end interface to do your actual 45Z calculation. Then it has an updated GREET model, which is a very, very thorough, complicated, clunky Excel file. But it's missing the feedstock calculator. So you have to calculate the carbon intensity of the feedstock. Then that plugs into the GREET model. Then that would plug into the 45Z front end interface. So we're missing that feedstock calculator. And they're going to need to get that released here, hopefully sooner rather than later. The USDA published some of their recommendations, I would call it. They published the technical guidelines. It's a really long name, but basically technical guidelines for quantifying and verifying the carbon intensity score of biofuels, of biofuel feedstocks. And in the USDA recommendations, they lay out very well the MRV protocol, so the measuring, reporting, and verifications, basically the audit protocols. They did a good job of laying out a lot of those details. They recommend a new feedstock calculator, and it was just kind of overly simplified. They took the old GREET feedstock calculator and they built on top of that a USDA feedstock calculator, but it only is check a couple boxes. So cover crop, tillage, which could be conventional, reduced till, or no till, and they did clarify what would constitute as each one of those. And then for nitrogen, it's just do you use a nitrate inhibitor? So it's only nitrate inhibitors, not other enhanced efficiency methods. Nitrate inhibitors, spring split applications, and they have some details about that, and then no fall nitrogen. But for example, I was playing around with the no fall nitrogen one, and what I was looking at is it got only about one CI point of reduction. So a lot of farmers, of course, put on at least a portion of the nitrogen in the fall, and only one CI point to go away from that. I just don't think that's going to really do anything. Like it's super minimal. Farmers who are already only spring applying, sure, be able to check that box and be able to get an extra point of reduction. But yeah, I don't think it's going to encourage change. There was enough points allocated to reduction of tillage and to the addition of cover crop that I think that would be enough to incentivize some change. Um, it's not as amazing as it was, but it did fix certain counties that were previously kind of broken in the old GREET model. So it fixed things for some farmers who were further away from the I states. You now can get your carbon intensity score calculated, including like in Kentucky, so further down south as well. That wasn't necessarily working before. Now it's working. Some more stuff up in North Dakota. So you can get a more accurate CI score in some of those different areas. But what we are pushing for, and we'll be pushing for in the public comment period, is really a combo deal. We need the old GREET feedstock calculator, which actually included yield. Of course, has to be involved. And in the USDA one, it's not for some reason. You got to have yield. We need to have actual fertilizer application rates. For some reason, the USDA model did not include the actual rates of fertilizer application, which obviously has huge environmental impact and economic impact. A couple other details as well, including manure and other stuff. So we want to continue to utilize the GREET feedstock calculator, but take some of the components that USDA built out to fix the counties that previously were not working correctly, which would cause winners and losers in an unnecessary way. So gonna have to get a new feedstock calculator going forward. One of the really interesting things that's a new concept that was introduced by the USDA is the concept of creating a biofuel feedstock report. We've been calling these CI certificates. This is basically the biofuel feedstock report that a farmer or somebody helping the farmer is going to have to put together field by field to document what were the practices field by field. Therefore, what was the CI score field by field? And the farmer's got to do an attestation associated to that document. Basically, copy and paste what we have been doing with our CI certification program. But I do think that there's going to be an opportunity to create non-verified biofuel feedstock reports versus verified biofuel feedstock reports. At Continuum, we've always been going to let's get it all verified, let's go through the audit protocols, and let's make this super legit, right? But in some of the language, I think it opens up opportunity for a farmer to just get the report created, get the attestation done, and that's what we're looking at being able to help with that. More on that coming soon. But you could actually go through the audit later if you wanted to. But every point of aggregation, there has to be an audit. So an audit at the elevator, an audit at the biofuel producer. You've got to go through a third-party audit, or the farmer can proactively do it, and that could be accepted by the auditors up the chain. So I think there's opportunity there. The key that the USDA recommended is they want mass balance, which means that the data and the grain have to stay together. So you have to take low carbon corn and track it, whether it goes directly to the biofuel producer, say the ethanol plant, or That grain goes to an elevator, then it has to physically end up at an ethanol plant. So this is causing a lot of additional cost, a lot of additional tracking that's got to be done. There's not necessarily a lot of infrastructure built to facilitate that today. We've got some partners that we will have the ability to do that very, very soon. We had already done some pilot project stuff on it last year. Like we knew that this was one of the ways that it could go, but it's just causing plenty of unnecessary cost and headache that we got to track and verify these things every step of the way. What we'll be pushing for in the feedback is for a book and claim, which is where you can decouple the physical corn from the data called a biofuel feedstock report or a CI certificate. That would really help to clean up the market. And we can avoid double counting. We've got the systems there. But then the corn can go wherever the corn needs to go and not impact local basis and unnecessarily jack up costs, especially for livestock folks. And it would really help to make 45Z work in a more scalable manner if we had book and claim. So, and that is definitely one of the things to put on the radar is the losers in a lot of the announcements recently is the livestock producers. From the USDA rules, manure was not included, yield was not included, and you got to do mass balance, which all hurts the livestock folks. I'll run some additional math, but I anticipate that it could have potential to hurt the livestock producer to the tune of 20 some to 35 cents a bushel, just in increased cost of trying to keep that corn in their supply chain. And there's very simple ways through a book and claim that could be avoided. So I'll make a video about kind of the math and stuff at some point there, and put together a little some talking points as we go into the public comment period. Last couple of things that were key takeaways. I believe the ethanol plants, so they do need to start locking in their supply. So if USDA gets their way and the Department of Energy does keep this to a mass balance approach, that means when the rules come out and get finalized, which it definitely still looks like we can get that done, but when that happens, that biofuel producer has no other option but to go to the farmers who sold them the grain and get their biofuel feedstock report, get their CI scores. So you couldn't go to the open market to satisfy your decarbonization needs. You have to work with the farmers in your supply chain, which I believe means biofuel producers, you better start locking in those farmers now because there is a lot of other carbon credit programs and other efforts out there that farmer could sell their data into. And I know that because we're helping to facilitate some of those, and we're making those decisions with our growers right now about what direction are we going to go. So it's farmer can sign some of these contracts and cash a check right now, or they have to continue to hold off until the biofuel producer, gets clarity in the rules, and then they can go to them. Obviously, I think locking in that supply and basically putting together an options contract, it's not going to warrant a ton of money. There's not money flowing right now, but in order to make sure that the biofuel producer and that farmer are able to execute on an agreement and sell that biofuel or sell that feedstock data, you got to make sure that that option's there and that the farmer didn't sign somebody else's program and leave. So I think that's a really key thing that biofuel producers need to be working on right now is communicating with the farmers, understanding what the CI scores are. Obviously, now we have two different models that we have to calculate scores on, and we'll be calculating both the USDA feedstock calculator score and the Department of Energy GREET CI score. We'll have both of those in our software very soon. Sounds like in the coming, I won't speculate, but very soon we'll have both of the scores integrated in there. But biofuel producers need to be locking in that supply to at least give themselves the option. Farmers, you need to understand and control your data, and obviously that's what really we're here for. And we all need to be gearing up for this public comment. There's multiple things that are pretty darn good in some of the rules. There's definitely some opportunity here. The math to be pretty good for everybody, a big enough pie that it'll incentivize participation. But there's definitely some core issues within some of the USDA rules And of course, the IRS did not necessarily, get quite far enough along in regards to how this is going to impact farmers. So they've got to make a couple more steps along, and that process could be a little while yet. But we need to be voicing our opinions and make sure that they get this fixed up. So more to come on those takeaways, but those are kind of the 10 things. 45Z is not dead. IRS though didn't quite do enough. Trump's guys got to get it done. The 45Z CF GREET model is out, but the feedstock calculator is missing. The USDA wants mass balance, and they want their own calculator, which uh, both not necessarily great. We need a combo feedstock calculator at the end of the day. The biofuel feedstock reports are going to be something that every farmer's got to have who wants to participate in this. That was laid out very clear. The USDA's MRV protocol, the audit protocol, is extremely similar to the one that Continuum Ag has proactively built out. So really excited that the major investment and bet that we made is really going to end up paying off for ourselves and for our farmers. And our MRV protocols set up that we can help farmers, but all the elevators want to participate. You're going to need to go through audits. We can help you, and all of the biofuel producers. You're going to have to go through an audit. We've got the protocol set up. You can utilize ours, and we can help you to get through that. The biofuel producers do need to lock in their supply right now, because if it is going to be mass balance, you better lock in to make sure you have the option to purchase that data from your farmers. Farmers need to understand what their scores are and understand how their data is managed and get it organized. And we got to be ready for the public comment. So a 10 takeaways, a lot of stuff, but hopefully that's a good quick 15-minute recap for you all. All right, let's go to the Q&A. Got a variety of them here, but feel free to fire away in the chat. Bob is asking, is there going to be a difference in the credits between winter kill and spring termination? No. Winter kill was introduced in this new USDA guidance. It was not necessarily in some of the 40B guidance and some of the things that we'd seen previously, but in this new USDA guidance, they did say that a winter kill cover crop is okay. Now you'll have to follow local NRCS guidelines as far as planting dates and rates and that kind of thing. But there is no CI difference between a winter kill cover crop, a single species overwintering cover crop, a multi-species cover crop. They all count. They all count the same. Pat is asking, when will the elevator be able to separate low CI grain versus traditional grain, or an elevator be a mass number? So it's going to be mass balance, Pat. So is what the USDA is wanting. USDA is recommending mass balance, which I'll put together some better explanation of this at some point. But basically, the quick and easy of it is, if you got an elevator that buys 10 million bushels of corn every year, say they have 3 million bushels that is low carbon corn, which means it has a biofuel feedstock report and that it adopted at least one of the practices, therefore generating a CI score that's less than 29. So if you got 3 million bushels that is low carbon, you're able to say, out of our 10 million bushels, 3 million of it is low carbon. And you can then sell 3 million bushels that is low carbon. You have to document on a rolling basis of no longer than 3 months how many bushels of low carbon corn you have on hand and how many bushels of conventional corn crop you have on hand. Then also in that time frame, you have to document how many bushels did you sell, therefore how many bushels did you retain. So it's kind of a bushels started with, so low carbon bushels started with, low carbon bushels purchased, low carbon bushels sold, low carbon bushels remaining, which then of course rolls into the next period's low carbon bushels started with. So you have to continue to document the ins and outs and the flow of that low carbon data. And basically the farmer selling the corn, the farmer selling the certificates to that producer. It was unclear to me whether they would then have to do a weighted average of those CI scores. I believe that would be the case. I'm definitely not an expert on the mass balance piece. And again, the book and claim would be a lot easier. But I will get some more feedback for all of us and get some additional experts in here to help us to make sure that we understand that correctly. But the core is farmer would be a weighted average of all of your CI scores field by field. That was clear in the rules. And then your data goes with your grain to the elevator. Then they have to mass balance it. They also have to get it audited every step along the chain as well. Mike in the chat, what are your plans? Oh, sorry. What plans to work with ethanol plants in Nebraska so producers have options like E-Energy Adams? Are biological farmers addressed in the new GREET? Yeah, thanks, Mike. Good stuff. So the approach. Okay, so I have like over last winter, I was really pounding the pavement, meeting with a bunch of different ethanol plants. I've had meetings with a ton of them. I'd calculated or quantified, I'd met with those folks represent over 120 ethanol plants. There's 192 of them in the country. So I've talked with a lot of them. I think at this point, I'm getting some of my pitch and some of our information kind of finalized here throughout this week and next, and then I'll be able to really have some detailed answer to this. But I believe where we can help as Continuum, where we can help the ethanol plant, is that they've got to score all of their farmer grain and they have to go through an audit annually. The software that we've built out and the MRV protocol that we've built with our third party auditor, it would suffice the demands of the USDA with very minor tweaks. So basically, that ethanol plant could contract in Continuum to help them go through that audit protocol. Obviously, a lot of you farmers, we already have your data. It'd be very, very easy. And they could go through those audits and we can do it extremely inexpensively as well. We've already proven that. So we want to work with the biofuel producers to help them score and verify their supply chain. That's one way that we can help them. If they're going to go with a different software, that's okay. We have the farmer data that we can plug into their software upon the farmer's request. But yeah, we can facilitate the audits and the data management for that ethanol plant and help them to capitalize on this. So especially folks who have carbon capture systems are going to be really well positioned to maximize the 45Z credit that was cleared up in the IRS rules. But yeah, want to go and meet with more of the ethanol plants. I've got multiple of those conversations already happening with some of the plants we already had a previous relationship with. But definitely want to go and talk with your ethanol plant. The key in that conversation is going to be ethanol plant. When we get the rules, if it's mass balance, like USDA is saying that they want to do, if it's mass balance and we get the rules, you have no choice but to go to the farmers in your supply chain. So why don't we start that conversation now to make sure they are managing their data appropriately, maybe getting some of those estimated CI scores and things put together. Maybe we don't go through the full audits right now and spend that money. That's okay. But at least let's start getting those farmers in that system. Maybe, like I said, putting together the options contracts because farmers are being pulled to sign up for a lot of different carbon programs. And if it's mass balance, the farmer and the biofuel producer are locked in and tied together. You can't go and buy credits from a book and claim from anybody in the country, which would help a lot. So the biofuel plants need to be talking with their farmers now. Are biological foliars addressed in the new GREET model? No. Cover crop, reduced tillage or no-till, nitrification inhibitors, spring split application of nitrogen, and no fall nitrogen. That's it. So very limited, better than the 3-practice bundled approach from before. But that's why we want the GREET Feedstock Calculator to be a lot better. Bob, can a cover crop be flown on or have to be drilled? Not specified. You can use, it sounds like you can apply it however you want, just based on local NRCS guidelines. So it's going to be the timing, the rate, the species, changing your rate based on application method. That's all based on local NRCS guidelines. So that would be some of the stuff that's already in EQIP and CSP, like some of the guidelines in that. That's what you want to work with and talk with your local folks. And we can, my agronomist and stuff, we can help to try to do some research into that. But that's in the GREET model and stuff, they didn't specify anything. How do you see the relationship work between the landlord and the producer on cost share cash rent? Mark, great question. This hasn't come up for a while, so I'm glad you're bringing that up. I do think that the increased potential here for increased revenue to the farm brings an opportunity, of course, for the landlords. I think there would be opportunity for more. Oh gosh, why am I blanking on it? just for more crop sharing, for more flex leases, where if the farmer is investing more to decarbonize their operation, they're obviously taking on bigger risk. They should be rewarded for that. But if that landlord also wants to participate in that, they can maybe share in some of that risk by crop sharing or utilizing the flex lease to be able to have kind of a base in there. And then as there's success and as there's new revenue coming in, both parties have the potential to benefit from it. Obviously, any additional increase in revenue going to the farmer could impact just normal cash rent as well. So that's another way to do it. But I do think that there'll be opportunity for farmers that are trying to increase revenue based on based on their ability to go generate new income. I have seen a couple posts online actually about landlords looking for tenants and specifically wanting to give preference based on those who are pursuing the 45Z credit. So, very interesting deal. Mike, I see your message there. Let's email. Let me, yeah, send me an email with that info, Mike, and let me get back to you there so I can look at my calendar. Um, Joel, what do you say? Yield needs to be part of the calculation. The farmer can do all the right things, and the weather can still take the yield. Yeah. So, Joel, couple key things on the yield piece. Okay. So, what I mean is missing right now in the yield deal is that the calculation and the score that we are running is the carbon footprint per bushel. Well, if the actual bushels produced is never actually factored in, we're not actually calculating the yield per bushel. Just doesn't make sense. So we need to understand what is the actual yield per acre, what were the emissions, everything in the numerator side of the equation, what was the yield that's in the denominator side of the equation. It rewards efficiencies and all that, and rewards folks who can do more with less. The definition of sustainability, especially from my buddy Christian. Now, when yield is bad from outside sources, acts of God, drought, flood, whatever, that's where insurance continues to kick in. I believe that there's going to be opportunities for additional gap insurance, gap revenue protection insurance, and new efforts that'll go on top of just normal federal crop insurance to help to protect against this downside. But the main thing, what I'm arguing about with the yield is it's just a core thing to the calculation is we're calculating the carbon footprint per bushel. Well, you got to factor in how many bushels you actually produced. And in this updated model, for some reason, they don't have the per acre yield factored in. So it's just an issue there. The other piece, because they don't factor in the fertilizer either, that also leads to a lot of issues. So, for example, you could check the box that you did a cover crop, and it could be super bare minimum. You could check the box that you did a reduced till or no till, but you could over apply a bunch of nitrogen fertilizer that has a huge environmental impact to it and end up with really crappy yields. And you would have the same CI score as a farmer who used efficient use of fertilizer and had a great yield. So there's just a core fundamental flaw. If we are actually talking about decarbonization here, you got to factor in the nitrous oxide emissions coming from the amount of fertilizer applied, and you got to factor in the yield amongst other things. So that's what I'm getting at. And then, yeah, the insurance pieces, I think, come in to protect against the revenue. There'll be opportunities, I believe, for that for not only the farmer, but the other folks in the supply chain as well. And again, the futures contracting and opportunity to utilize book and claim helps to solve for some of these things as well. Yeah, Mike, some of my goals about the role on my appointment to the advisory group. So I got appointed to be to a technical advisory committee underneath the incoming Secretary of Ag. It was set up by the Growing Climate Solutions Act. So it's very focused on carbon markets and carbon quantification and whatnot. But I mean, a couple of key things I'm going to be pushing for is make sure that the data collection is easy for farmers. And by that, I mean integrating in with a lot of the data we're already collecting. So, like there, for one quick example, in the USDA recommendations, they talk about how you have to have a nutrient management plan set up before you apply the nutrients, and you have to do soil sampling within every 2 years as part of that plan. Well, most farmers pull soil samples every 4 years. Just as one quick example, maybe that's a thing that would be like it would make a lot more sense to go with a manure management plan recommendation, which is every 4 years, and to have alignment with that. That if you're going to have a nutrient management plan, it should be based on, or should have the flexibility to integrate soil samples down every 4 years. That's just one example. But I think also just making sure that it's uh, keeping additionality out of carbon intensity conversations. I think that's going to be critical. It's not about the change, it's about what was your actual impact on that given year. So I think that's another one that comes to mind. Making sure that the data remains owned by farmers and doesn't end up getting used against us from government and doesn't end up out there being public and stuff. So I think some of those data privacy things are going to be really important here as well. And then just the push that, away from carbon credits and more this shift that we're seeing towards carbon intensity, I think is really why I got appointed to this, to help make sure that these government agencies understand the different angles to quantifying carbon and decarbonizing, make sure that they understand that there's more than just one path here. So a couple of things there. I have recently gotten an email from them, and it sounds like we're going to be organizing our first introduction Zoom meeting here in the coming weeks. So I'm really looking forward to it, and trying to do my best to advocate for farmers, for ag, for biofuels, but really just of course, my specific appointment is to speak on behalf of the family farm. And that's what I'm going to do. So, Mark, have you been working with Renewable Fuel Association at state and national level when it comes to common period and having common goal? Yeah, absolutely. So, conversation, we're a member of the Renewable Fuel Association, the Iowa Renewable Fuel Association, Growth Energy. We very much want to make sure that we align with them. And from what I've seen in their initial hot takes, it looks like we already do align. We were very much having those conversations before the previous public comments. And yeah, absolutely, we want to make sure that we are aligned and having multiple conversations before we submit our actual comments here for this. But yeah, we're gonna have loud, common voices here. Stay focused on a couple of these core action items, and make sure that we instill some change. So great stuff, great questions, a lot to keep getting sorted out. Like I've been alluding to, we're trying to figure out what pivots and shifts can we be making here. We're changing up our audit protocol to make sure that we reflect some of these recent updates. We're integrating both of the GREET models because we don't know or both of the feedstock calculators, since we don't know what angle it's going to be. We're preparing for the mass balance and making sure that we are fully going on mass balance. We had piloted it before. Now it's full bore ahead on mass balance, while still advocating for book and claim and making sure we have our systems there. So it's kind of doing all the above, but I think we have to at this point. And farmers, like I said, it's definitely not dead. It's definitely still opportunity, but farmers and biofuel folks, we got to get working together. Gary, can you share the link to the public comment? Yes, we will do that. I'll get that shared out here later. Okay, we got 2 months to be able to get that done. I will get our thoughts organized and we'll be sharing that public comment link here later. I think you can go find it in the registry stuff. There was details about it in the USDA technical guidelines. I don't have it right here to paste in, but we'll be talking about it a lot going forward and make sure that everyone's got it. So, all right, good stuff, everyone. Thanks for being on here, and we'll talk to you on the next CI Chit Chat. Multiple webinars coming up as well, so be sure to be watching for those. But have a great day, everybody.